So I am a huge Pokemon fan, and if you're watching this, you probably are too. Some of my best memories growing up are playing those old Pokemon Game Boy games with my friends and my brothers. It was just such a blast, and we had so much fun with those games, and I know that a lot of you guys can relate. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys how I made this tiny Pokemon-themed emulation device that can play all of those old awesome Pokemon games. So go grab some Persim berries and some full restores from your local Pokemart, and let's build a PokeBoy Nano SP. With anything in life, it's usually a good idea to start off with a plan, even if everything just goes to crap and falls apart. But at least you tried. Because we're going to be making this device mostly from scratch, there's going to be a few components, and it's really important that we have a good plan. First and foremost, we need a brain. And for this, we're going to be using the Raspberry Pi Zero 2W, mostly because it's really small and it has lots of documentation and can be easy to use.
It's a giraffe!
Alright, so drawing is not really in my skill set, so let's not even try that again. For the display, we're going to be using a 2-inch TFT from Waveshare that takes input via SPI. We're also going to need buttons for controls. To do this, we're going to hook up momentary tact switches to the GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi Zero. For the PokeBoy Nano SP, I want to use a small mono speaker, so I need a way to get an analog audio signal out of the Raspberry Pi Zero. To do this, I'll be using this small audio amplifier and then hooking up this small speaker. Finally, we're going to need something to power all of these components, and because we want this device to be handheld, we're going to need a battery. But unfortunately, you can't just slap a battery onto the Raspberry Pi and expect things to work. We're going to need a power management board, and essentially what this board is going to do is take our voltage from our battery, which is going to be anywhere from 3.2 to 4.2 volts, and it's going to output a consistent 5 volts that we can use to power the Raspberry Pi as well as other components. This board is also going to allow us to charge our battery and power our system via USB-C. And within our power system, we're going to use this little off and on switch so that we can turn our device off and on. Now, using all of these components, we need to make a prototype, and the best way to do that is to use these things called breadboards. These have little holes and have rails that are connected together, and then you use these jumper wires to make connections between electronic components. In theory, by using these, your project should go a lot smoother, but that didn't really happen with the PokeBoy Nano SP. Things got a little,
What? It's just an ordinary crabby. Oh my goodness!
It might be kind of hard to tell from this picture, but this is just an absolute travesty. The soldering, the wiring, it is just so bad. So many things went wrong, and I was just getting so annoyed and impatient, and this is what we ended up with. But somehow this actually turns on and works. So I guess I'll take this as a dub, even though it's super trash. Alright, well, let's get this mess cleaned up.
Deactivate the car alarm, clean up the mess. Okay, find out whose car that is.
Aw, Pidgey, use Whirlwind! Snorlax, use Body Slam! Now it's all up to you, Magikarp. Finish him off with your splash!
Now we're ready to do some 3D modeling, and this is actually one of my favorite parts of the whole project. It's just really chill, honestly, and way less stressful than all of the software issues that I had to deal with in the prototyping phase. I'm going to start out by recreating all of the components that I'm going to be using in this build in my 3D space. And just a disclaimer, I am totally self-taught in 3D modeling, and for those of you professionals out there, this might be a little cringy. Now that I've recreated those components, I can start making the case. And I think I must have been possessed by a Gengar when planning this, because I specifically chose to do a clamshell design, which is notoriously hard to get right. And at this point, it started to get dicey. I was honestly a little stumped at how to get this clamshell design right, but I did eventually come up with a solution that uses a 1mm in diameter steel rod that goes through both pieces. It's mid at best, but it's gonna have to work. And this is the case mostly completed. I did add a few things after this, and there was lots and lots of adjusting after 3D printing some of the parts, but this is pretty much it. And now we can get this case 3D printed. Now we're going to get in touch with our feminine side by painting nail polish onto the caps of these momentary tack switches. My thought was that this was going to make some really cool looking buttons, but yeah, this was just a terrible idea. It was at this moment that he knew he'd forgotten to save.
Please, no! 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 No!
Like the true Magikarp that I am, I decided to just keep splashing. Because, you know what they say.
That's what she said!
Now, let's put this thing together. So somehow this actually turns on and works, which is pretty awesome considering that most of this project was pretty rough. This was probably just a little bit too ambitious considering I'm just getting back into electronics. I did overall have a lot of fun with this though, but I definitely wouldn't recommend this as something that you should do. It wasn't logical or economical, and there are some really cool devices out there that can do this same thing. So I'll put some links down in the description for you guys for some of my personal favorite emulation devices. Some of them will be affiliate links, but it doesn't cost you any extra to use them, and using them is a great way to support me and this channel. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. My name is Spencer, and this is Pixels and Polymer.